It's funny how people always talk about love being blind. But no one warns you what happens when the world decides you're the broken one, and they turn blind to you instead. That's the irony I woke up with every day, sitting in silence while my phone buzzed with messages I pretended not to hear, because reading them meant facing the pity behind every word. I was 24 when my vision began fading like a sunset that refused to return. At first, it was just blurred edges and dim lights that I could excuse as exhaustion. But soon, shadows swallowed faces, colors dulled, and the world became a muted canvas where I no longer recognized even myself. Friends disappeared quicker than my eyesight. Invitations stopped. Whispers began. And my family, though present, carried disappointment so heavy it made the air in the house suffocating. America was loud, bright, merciless, and I felt invisible. The last place I expected to find light was in the sterile, white corridors of a hospital in New York. Yet it was there, between the echo of beeping monitors and the rustle of paper charts, that I met him. Dr. Evan Carter, 28, impossibly young to carry the weight of so many broken souls, and yet he wore kindness like a second skin. The first time he walked into my examination room, I hated him instantly. Not because of who he was, but because of how he looked at me, not with pity, not with condescension, but with something dangerously close to genuine care. And I didn't want that. Care meant hope, and hope was a cruel thing when you were already drowning. "You're not broken," he said softly, as if he had read my thoughts. "You're just learning to see the world differently." I almost laughed. A doctor with metaphors, how cliché. But his voice had this calm steadiness that lingered in my chest long after he left. Weeks turned into months. Appointments turned into conversations. And before I knew it, my calendar wasn't filled with reminders of what I had lost, but with moments I secretly looked forward to hearing his footsteps. The subtle way his chair creaked when he sat across from me. The warmth in his tone when he asked, "How are you? Really?" He didn't flinch when my clumsy hands fumbled over papers. He didn't rush when I took too long to find my cane. Instead, he laughed with me, and sometimes painfully, for me, but always by my side. The city outside still rejected me. Strangers stared too long. Coworkers who once joked with me avoided eye contact. And even my closest friends found excuses not to meet. Yet, within the walls of that hospital, I was seen. Not just seen, understood. One evening, after a particularly brutal day where my supervisor hinted I should consider less demanding work, I stormed into the clinic with anger buzzing through me like static. Evan found me in the hallway, fists clenched, breathing uneven. "Tell me, doctor," I snapped. "What kind of future do you think someone like me has? Who's gonna love me now? Who's going to stay?" For a moment, silence filled the space, heavy and unbearable. Then, in a voice steady but trembling at the edges, he whispered, "I would." The world froze. My throat closed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to laugh in his face, call it pity, call it another cruel joke life was playing on me. But when his hand brushed mine, just a fleeting touch, almost accidental, my defenses cracked. Because it wasn't pity in his touch. It was something softer, more dangerous. Something I had convinced myself I'd never feel again. From that night, everything shifted. Our conversations bled into personal confessions. His stories of long nights in med school, his regrets about lost time, his quiet fear that he'd never live beyond the walls of the hospital. My fears, my anger, my broken pieces I had hidden away for too long. We shared them like contraband secrets, fragile but binding. There were nights I would sit by my window, the city a blur of lights, and imagine what his face looked like when he smiled at me. I couldn't see it fully, but I could feel it. In the way his voice warmed, in the pauses he left as if to give me space, in the quiet that never felt empty when we were together. But love in America was never simple. Not for two men, and certainly not for one who was blind and bitter, and the other who was tied to his career, his reputation, his future. Rumors spread. Whispers in hospital corridors. A nurse's offhand remark that Dr. Carter seems a little too invested in his patient. And suddenly, the safe space we had built felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. One night, after a late appointment, he walked me out to the street. The autumn air was sharp, carrying the smell of roasted chestnuts from a cart nearby. He held my cane steady as I navigated the curb, his hand lingering longer than necessary. "You know this won't be easy," he said, voice low, almost swallowed by the city noise. "I don't need easy," I replied, heart pounding. "I just need real." And for the first time since the darkness took over my life, I felt something brighter than sight. I felt hope. The weeks that followed tested every fragile thread we had woven together. Love, I discovered, wasn't just stolen glances and whispered promises. It was fire, relentless and merciless, burning through every fear we had buried. Hospital administrators began circling like vultures. One meeting, one warning after another, all couched in polite words that barely hid their intent. "Dr. Carter, maintain professionalism. Dr. Carter, avoid unnecessary attachment." They didn't see me as a person, only a liability. To them, I was a mark on his career, a risk that could ruin the perfect arc of a young physician. I told him more than once that he should walk away, that he deserved better than a man whose future was shrinking, whose world was darkening day by day. "Find someone who won't hold you back," I begged him one night, my voice breaking. But Evan was stubborn. He leaned across the table where we sat, his hand finding mine, grounding me. "You're not holding me back. You're the only thing that feels like moving forward." It was reckless. It was impossible. And yet it was ours. Still, the pressure mounted. My mother found out after overhearing a phone call, her voice sharp with disapproval. "A doctor, really? Do you think pity is love? Do you think this will last when the reality of your condition hits harder?" Her words sank into me like stones, dragging me back into the abyss I thought I had left behind. Pulled away. From Evan. From the hospital. From everything. Days stretched into weeks where I ignored his calls, his messages. I convinced myself I was doing the noble thing, saving him from me, from the burden, from the scandal. I threw myself into silence, into the shadows, until loneliness became unbearable. And then came the night I nearly broke. Crossing the street near my apartment, my cane slipped from my grasp. Tires screeched, horns blared, and for a moment, my body froze, paralyzed by fear. Hands yanked me back just in time, strong and steady, and I collapsed against the chest of the very man I had tried so hard to push away. His voice was ragged with anger, but laced with something deeper. "Do you have any idea what it's like watching you disappear from me piece by piece? You don't get to decide for me, damn it. I stay because I love you. Blindness or not, gossip or not, career or not. You." The city roared around us, but I heard nothing else. My world, blurred and broken, found focus in his words. I felt the shape of his face as my trembling hands reached up, and before doubt could creep in, I kissed him. Messy, desperate, but real. From then, I stopped running. We carved out a life that wasn't easy but was ours. He learned to guide me without making me feel small. I learned to let him in without fearing the weight I carried. Together, we built routines: morning coffees where he described the sunrise for me, evening walks where he narrated the chaos of Times Square, Sunday afternoons where we cooked badly but laughed anyway. Of course, battles never vanished. There were stares, judgments, obstacles. But every time the world tried to convince me I was unworthy, Evan's love stood like a lighthouse. Steady, bright, unyielding. The day I finally introduced him to my family, tension knotted the room. My mother's silence was colder than the January wind. My father cleared his throat 100 times, trying to find words that wouldn't wound. Yet Evan, patient as ever, didn't flinch. He spoke with quiet dignity, describing not just his love for me, but his belief in me. It didn't change everything overnight, but it cracked something open. And sometimes cracks are where the light gets in. Months later, as spring painted the city green again, I stood with Evan on the Brooklyn Bridge. The air was crisp, the river beneath us restless. He placed something small in my hand, a band of silver, cool against my skin. "I don't care if the world never understands," he said, voice trembling but sure. I don't care if the whispers never stop. What I care about is us. Will you let me stay, officially, permanently, for as long as you'll have me? Tears blurred what little vision I had left, but my answer was steady. Yes, stay. He kissed me there, against the skyline of a city that had once made me feel invisible. And in that moment, I realized something extraordinary. Love had given me a vision clearer than any sight I'd ever known. Not all stories end in grand miracles. My blindness didn't vanish. The world didn't suddenly grow kinder. But love made me brave enough to live, not just survive. And as his hand fit into mine, warm and certain, I knew that even in darkness, I would never walk alone again, because when everyone else turned away, he stayed. And that made all the difference. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.